Hello, this is Dr. Marty Klein with more Sexual Intelligence. Today I want to talk about Gen Z men, sex, and porn. Many of Gen Z's young men have a troubled relationship to sex. Porn is not the problem. However, how young men consume and digest porn is a problem. Most people are able to watch films like Star Wars, The Hurt Locker, Mad Max, and Harry Potter without thinking that they're instructional, manuals on how to drive, fly, fight, or conjure. But somehow, today's young men think porn is a library of documentaries whose behavior they should copy when they're in bed with someone. That's a problem for both them and their partners. Well, before we get to porn, let's look at the context in which most of these guys have sex. That is, when they have sex, which is less often than previous generations of young people. First, many are economically insecure, with little confidence that that will change. Since men have been expected to be financial providers, or at least economically effective, since practically the beginning of time, young men with few economic prospects often lack wind in their heterosexual sails. And second, today's young people are not learning the subtleties of person-to-person communication the way their ancestors did, say, way back in the 1980s and 1990s. They now text each other rather than speaking on the phone. They scroll their phones at restaurants instead of listening to each other. They don't get to see the look in someone's eyes when that other person feels heard or misunderstood or interested or delighted. As a result of living this digital life, they don't learn nearly as much about the verbal and nonverbal cues that are so vital to understanding another human. At the same time, many young people date in groups rather than pairs, so they don't learn as much how to listen, share, or ask questions very much. They're simply not as relaxed one-on-one as they might be, because one-on-one without a digital intermediary isn't very familiar. Third, widespread casual sex has been the American norm for half a century and still is. For decades, casual sex was the climax of a years-long campaign of adolescent erotic experimentation, kissing, groping, being groped, half-undressed wrestling, dry humping, hand-to-genital skirmishing. Casual sex may not have been intimate, but it typically involved people who had had a series of physical experiences. Absent this prior trajectory, casual sex for many Gen Zers is almost a non sequitur. I talked to many young men who have gotten blowjobs from one or more women they barely knew, without ever seeing a woman naked, without ever smelling a vulva or discussing birth control. So what can such an inexperienced, ignorant young man do as he approaches his first intercourse or grown-up sleepover? Rely on stereotypes of sex, women, and their bodies. Where to find such gossip? Porn! And that's what makes porn imagery so impactful for many Gen Z males. It's a substitute for the lived experiences of dating, courtship, making out, and eyeball-to-eyeball conversation. So if this season's porn tropes are man chokes woman, or man ejaculates on woman, or man thrusts penis down woman's throat, those images will stick in the Gen Z porn consumer's mind. After all, in the kingdom of the inexperienced, the tangible imagery of porn seems better than nothing, regardless of its exaggerations and fantasies. Now, like most kids in American history, Gen Zers' parents have not talked with them meaningfully about sex, much less porn. Now note, I'll kill you if I catch you watching porn does not qualify as an actual conversation. Gen Z is unprepared for the many sexual choices and decisions they face in a world of dating apps and casual sex, which means porn is their only sex education. While many parents understandably decry kids' access to porn, I do too, they haven't prepared kids for the confusion or shame resulting from consuming sexy images meant for adults. According to porn, the range of reasons to have sex is pretty limited. So for all their bluster about pronouns, non-binary genders, and consent, Gen Z's boys don't understand much about sex, and they therefore have trouble figuring out what to do before, during, and after it. So that's the context. Now, wheel in all that porn. Or to be more precise, wheel in the option to masturbate to porn virtually any time for as long as a kid likes. That opportunity would have consequences for people at any point in history. Those consequences include becoming so accustomed to a perfect hand that a vagina might not feel as good, the eyes replacing the penis as a primary sex organ, focusing on intensity rather than pleasure, being unfamiliar with the emotional aspects of sex, such as closeness or aliveness, as they aren't cinematic and therefore aren't represented. Also, porn rarely portrays women who are self-conscious, insecure, shy, conflicted, or feeling guilty or afraid of pregnancy, and so it offers no hints, accurate or not, on how to manage such an encounter. Gen Z men may not realize that that's exactly how a new sexual partner feels with them. This cluelessness often leads to the messy sexual interactions young people often describe. So, today's young men consume a lot of porn under personal and cultural circumstances that inevitably create problems. Porn has become their go-to solution to erotic inexperience, social isolation, sexual anxiety, depression, and insecurity about masculinity. One idea that's popular across the political spectrum is censoring porn, criminalizing it, or making it harder to access. This won't work with tech-savvy young people, but more importantly, it won't solve the sexual difficulties that Gen Zers face with or without porn. Young women have a role in changing the all guys watch and sometimes copy porn dynamic. They're not in charge of young men, but they are in charge of themselves. They need to say no when they want to say no, clearly state when they want to say yes to, and to ask themselves why they say yes to various unwanted activities, such as anal sex. But mostly, Gen Z's young men have a lot to look at. What does modern masculinity look like? Why don't romantic relationships seem that appealing to them? What are healthy ways to deal with loneliness? What's the point of all that masturbating to porn? And what kind of partner sex do they really want? The incel, involuntary celibacy, and no-fap, never masturbate, movements are sad male attempts to feel less powerless while keeping women at a distance and learning nothing about sexuality. Blaming their difficulties on so-called porn addiction is similarly futile, inevitably leading to relapse, often accompanied by lying or low sexual desire. I mostly don't care if young people have a bunch of sex or not, but if they're not going to have much sex, I'd like it to be for the right reasons, with positive results. Masturbating to porn doesn't have to be problematic, but young men need to understand what they're doing, why, and how it's affecting them. That's a lot to ask of youth, especially youth that lacks much partner or coupling experience. But simply blaming porn for young men's sexual issues, or wishing porn would just go away, that doesn't help anybody. As with most personal dilemmas, people need more empowerment and better judgment, not fewer opportunities. I'm Dr. Marty Klein. Thanks for joining me. Of course, please click and subscribe. And do see my Instagram account. It's Dr. Marty Klein, all one word. And check out my 100 videos on my YouTube library. Thanks for joining me.